What's good, everyone? G Berg Stacks here. Let's talk about Diadem of Songs. And if y'all don't remember who I am, I like my colonizers 6 feet under, and I hope that gives y'all enough of who I am. So let's talk about League of Legends because that's probably why y'all are here. So, Diadem of Songs. This item is not necessarily seen as anything other than a great item for when you buy Echoes of Helia, right? Every single time you see Diadem of Songs, it is only in, combination with Echoes of Helia. If you go on YouTube, if you go to Pro Play, hardly will you ever see Diadem of Songs as an item, in itself, right? Because it, to be honest, is a very hard item to understand, right? Compared at least to the other healing items, where a lot of these items that are heal and shield items, right, that give you heal and shield power, that give you effects for healing and shielding your teammates, are standard. You heal and shield your teammate, you get the effect. Diadem of Songs needs you to not only heal and shield your teammate, but they have to be in combat. They have to be in combat. That is the big crux, or that is the big misunderstanding of this item, and that is why this item is seen as very bad, because you are not in control of how good this item actually works, right? You are not in control of whether this item ends up having 8,000 healing by the end of the game or 2,000, 1,600, right, in a 20, 30, even 40-minute game. It's pretty sad, the differences depending on what happens in the game, right? Because it's not depending on you, it's depending on the other champions, which is a little sad. But I'm gonna talk about how to stack your tier as a support, because there's a lot of champions that would actually love this item. There's a lot of spots in the game or versus items versus champions where this item is extremely good, obviously in combination of with Echoes of Helia, because of how strong Echoes of Helia is. And then I want to go for a little rant on tier, like the different tiers of these. I'll do that at the end, right? So first, right, when you're building this item, you obviously need tier, and then Forbidden Idol, Ruby Crystal. I think this build path is trash. If you look at what this item gives you, 200 HP, that is less than some of the other items that end up giving you HP. Actually, kind of not really. A little bit, not too much. It's standard. The heal and shield power is less until you get around, until you stack your tier up, until you actually finish this item. You're just, it's just not as good. The base mana regeneration until you get Diadem of Songs, it's not even standard. But I guess they don't want to give you that much base mana regen because you already have a tier. But that don't make sense. 300 mana, that doesn't matter until you get Diadem of Songs, right? So, tier on a support item, on a support champion, right? Most support champions, they end up having targeted abilities, right? A lot of the times, because when we naturally see tier, we see it on laners, right? We see it on champions or just roles that interact with other champions, and they don't really interact with their own teammates, right? You see Ezreal, you see Ryze, you see, I don't know anybody in the top lane, whatever, Anivia. Let's throw her up there. These champions stack their tier by hitting the enemy champions and by hitting minions. But as a support, you have targeted abilities, and that not only makes it more frequent and easier and accessible for you to stack your tier, because you target a champion, you actually get the max amount you can to stack a tier, right? So if you land an ability, it grants you 3 mana. If you target, let's say, a minion, you'll get 3 mana. But if you target a champion, even if it's your own teammate, you get 6 mana, which is amazing, right? So one way to stack it, right? Let's say you and your laner got a good crash, you based. Coming out of base, once you buy this item, you can easily, let's talk about Senna, right? Senna, Sona, Soraka, some of these are Seraphine, right? These have shields and targeted abilities, right? So Senna, you come out, You press Q on your teammate, you get 6 stacks, right? You press E, you're gonna get another 6, and then I think it refreshes eventually, and you will get another 6. Or you can like, there's one way to get more than 1 stack on this. I think you have to move away from them after you stack the tier, and then, you know, once the passive of Senna E, Curse of the Black Mist, goes away, you can go right back to it, reapply it, and you'll get another stack, right? So that's one way to stack this item, right? I was in a game, I'll have the clip up, but I was getting pinged by my own teammate because I ended up having more tier stacks on. Well, I was stacking my tier faster than he was, and because of this little trick, right, where you're targeting your own teammates, you're using spells that you have, you're using the mana that you paid for to end up, you know, stacking it a lot faster. Because in all honesty, Diadem of Songs is a very, very strong item in the early game. That is mostly when it's strong, and then it scales by working with other items, such as Moonstone and Echoes of Helia, and then some of the other buff items like Staff Flowing Water, Ardent Censer, things like that. Right, so when we talk about Diadem of Songs, first of all, if we go back to the stats, right? When you completed 200 health, in total 14% heal and shield power, 1000 mana standard, 100% base mana regeneration, right? It's supposed to give you a lot of heal and shield power for stacking mana, but having essentially 1250 bonus mana only gives you 6% heal and shield power. That is 100% trash. Okay. I also want to state that it really doesn't matter what runes you go when you're building a Diadem of Songs, because heal and shield power isn't going to make the healing the Diadem of Songs actually be that big of a difference, right? You can have 100% healing shield power, and as you see, Diadem of Songs, the heal is going to be like 13 to maybe 17, 18 at max, right? So getting 100% healing shield power, essentially doubling it, right? You're getting maybe 36, maybe 30. It's not that big of a deal, right? So don't worry about min-maxing this item. That's not what this item is for, right? So let's talk about Diadem of Songs, right? So as we said, heal and shield your teammate. As long as they are in combat each second, it will end up healing the lowest health nearby ally for a small amount, right? For that 13. It scales up with your level, right? As a support, you're never, like, how often do you get level 18, right? At max 19 HP. At level 18, when everyone has pretty much a full build, close to full build, 19 health per second is not cutting it, right? Even if you have 100% healing shield power, blah, blah, blah. It's not really cutting it. But yeah, so what makes this item, you know, not super strong, right? When you're out of combat, you heal your teammate, you're not going to get, like, even if, you know, I just hit the enemy champion, right? If I had something like Echoes of Helia, not only would I have dealt the damage to the champion, but then dealing that damage would mean I heal my teammate more, right? And that is a lot of power for me. But Diadem of Songs works different. So what I have found out is that when you're playing with champions that have damage over time effects in their kit, or they buy damage over time items, more specifically, what you're going to see in the bot lane is champions that build Blackfire Torch. More, you know, it's going to be Blackfire Torch very, very early, right? That's going to be, you know, the #1 item that you're going to find, right? If you're playing with a Seraphine ADC, if you're playing with a Brand ADC, with a Karthus ADC, stuff like that, right? This item turns Diadem of Songs into a super healing early game item, because not only once they apply that Blackfire, will obviously they're in combat, so now the healing is starting, right? And then Blackfire Torch will continue to have your teammate in combat for an extra 3 seconds, as opposed to, you know, a basic attack from an ADC, right? A lot of ADCs, specifically in the meta that we're in, their trades, it's not one basic attack, right? They're going for pretty much all-in trades in order to, you know, get the biggest lead, because that's kind of how ADCs are, at least from my perspective, right? But Blackfire Torch, continuously keeping your teammate in combat means that one heal, one shield will now have essentially 6 seconds of healing from Diadem of Songs. Essentially, you know, if you hit one poke, you get double the healing from this item. Really changing the perception of trades once you have this item completed, which is extremely powerful. So when you're building this item, not only are you looking for teammates that are going to be building Blackfire Torch, there's also teammates like Ezreal, right? If you have a really good Ezreal, or if you're in a really good spot where the Ezreal is allowed to just continuously poke, continuously throw out Qs, you know, they're going to continuously be in combat, continuously activating Diadem of Songs, making, you know, the healing just spread around very, very well, right? Somebody like Ashe, who's going to be, you know, chucking out W's from a very long range. Something like Lethality Varus, right? These champions that have very low cooldowns, very high up times, and very easy to hit the enemy champions, makes Diadem of Songs very, very strong. That's one way that you can control, right? Let's say you have a duo partner. That's one way that you can control making this item very strong. But another way is if you know the enemy champion or the enemy team has champions that are going to build Blackfire Torch. You're going against an Ashe. You're going against an Ezreal. That is a great way to end up having Diadem of Songs also, you know, be very powerful in that game, right? Making it just exponentially stronger. And so there we go, right? That's pretty much one of the biggest misconceptions of this item, right? Just to put it into perspective, right? So y'all can actually see how this item works. We just give our items. We give our items to our teammates, right? Hit this, and once the Sunfire starts working, you see this will continuously, even though I only basic attacked the enemy champion or I healed my teammate one time, this will continuously heal over time, right? And don't look at the number, it's very weird, right? But as long as your teammate stays in combat, this item will continue to heal, right? Making it, right, over time, being seen as pretty much a dot canceller, right? So, you know, a Blackfire Torch going into the late game, even with, you know, let's say a ton of items, it's only dealing around 20, it's dealing like very low damage over time, right? And each of those ticks is being pretty much countered by Diadem of Songs, right? So just think of it as like a counter to 1 damage over time ability, right? Or 1 damage over time item, right? Yeah. So finally, let's talk about some items you want to build this with. Obviously, right? A good way to make it extremely strong versus damage over time is by spreading the healing. You get Moonstone, and now you're healing 2 teammates for pretty much the same amount, making it even that much stronger. You get Echoes of Helia, right? Every basic attack now does even more healing, and then with Moonstone Renewer, right, you're dealing even more healing, making it extremely strong. Getting something like Ardent Censer, right? Now, whoever you heal without actually having to target them. Obviously, if you have an item like Ardent Censer or Staff of Flowing Water where you want to specifically buff one teammate, you use your targeted abilities to make sure that that person specifically gets the buff that they need, right? With Diadem of Songs, you're not looking to increase your healing and shielding, right? Because it's just, you probably don't want Dawncore with this item. It doesn't do enough, maybe, given that, you know, you have Moonstone, you have Echoes of Helia, and these items are going to do a ton of healing. Maybe Dawn Core might be better in some situations, right? Just to increase your personal healing and shielding while also increasing your Echoes of Helia healing, right? That's pretty much the only reason why you would get Dawn Core, is if you're a champion like Sona or Senna that has a ton of healing in their kit or a ton of ways to proc Echoes of Helia. And so increasing your healing shield power by an extra 30%, 20%, or 25% will actually, matter, right? You do that, and then you get a massive heal with Echoes of Helia. That's pretty much the only reason I think Dawn Core can be good, right? If you're trying to increase Echoes of Helia healing because you're a champion that deals a ton of damage as support already, right? So you're looking at Seraphine, you're looking at I don't know, Sona, I guess. Maybe she does a lot of damage, I don't know, right? But that's pretty much my take on Diadem of Songs. Nobody has really spoke about it. The rant I wanted to go for with Tyr is that when you look at all of these items, right, Manumane ends up being one of the most, or one of the highest AD giving items in the game, right? Just for merely getting level 18. And that compared to, how do I get rid of these damn, right here, that compared to what Diadem of Songs gets, where it's only like 11 starting, and then once you 11 starting healing over time, and then once you get to level 18 it only goes up by 8 healing. That's so dog shit, right? Even like you have triple scaling on Muramana, right? Not only does the bonus AD that you get from this item go up drastically, but the bonus damage that you do from this item goes up drastically. Like, that doesn't make any sense, right? You look at Winter's Approach or Fimbulwinter. First of all, the shield, I guess you can say, because its current mana does end up, getting increased. But, not by that much. The health you gain is only bonus mana. That's, tragic, right? What's, doubling the health you get from this item, is that really going to make a big difference? People are going to start buying it more, right? You get an extra Giant's Belt, but is that really a big deal? I don't think so. Archangel Staff, I mean, this item is already pretty strong, but is it really that big of a deal if you get, a little bit more AP, or if you get, if this thing would change, if you get a little bit more shielding? Or I think you already get the shield for being max mana, or for being max 8, or for being level 18, right, where you get a higher amount of max mana. But if you got a little bit of more AP, does that mean, that would mean that this just kind of becomes the best AP item, but you could just change the numbers down and just make it scale better with levels, right? It's just, to me, it's just not fair that Muramana scales extremely well with levels, and then it just, you don't see the same for these other items, for these other tier items. I feel like, especially given the direction, or what I heard Riot said, where they want to balance more for the champions, right? For the theme that you want to play, right? That's what they want to balance more for. And I think a cool thing that they could do with items, or at least with tier items, I could get into a whole other rant on items in general, but is, make them stronger every time you level up, right? You build them early so that they're very strong, as the game continues, right? But that's about it from me for this video. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. I hope you're able to take this information and start running over solo queue games and just, figuring out when this is good. Okay? Have a great day. Peace.